Hi, it's Maria from Women into Wellness. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about C-section recovery exercise, which exercises are best to do and which exercises to avoid to best facilitate your recovery. So stay tuned with me for that. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, then go ahead and click the subscribe button now. And if you're interested in C-section recovery, then check out the links that I've put below, because I've got some other videos that will be of interest to you, as well as a link to my C-section recovery 8 elements for healing and rehabilitation online program, which you can purchase to really take charge of your C-section recovery journey and healing process. So let's get started on C-section recovery exercise. So it goes without saying, following your C-section, you've had major abdominal surgery, and you really need to be mindful about how you start to rehabilitate your body so that you can rebuild your body methodically, efficiently, but most importantly, safely, so that you can get back to that place where you feel confident in your body, in not only what it looks like, but most importantly, in its functionality and what it can do. So this is why I'm going to provide you with information on what the exercises are that you should do and the type of exercises that you should not do, so that you've really got a good, clear scope of both. Now, I will point out first that if you would like a fully phased, gently progressive exercise program that's going to take you literally from a rest and recovery phase where you've just had your surgery right up to the point where you can go out and do strength training routines or do a HIIT workout or go and start running, then you're going to want to take a look at the C-section recovery program that I have linked below, because it lays it all out there for you and it takes you through that, all of the stages progressively in between. So let's get started. The first one that I'm going to cover for you is that you're going to go through a rest and recovery phase, and in this phase what you need to be thinking about doing is resting and recovering. But so it goes without saying, right? There are also some activities that you can do in this phase to just really start connecting that core, to start getting things working, getting things moving. And this is going to be to start doing breathing, and in particular lateral breathing, as well as doing isolated pelvic floor exercises, otherwise known as Kegels or Kegels, depending on which country you're from, and then also doing walking. So there's different ways that you can do these exercises. There's different breathing patterns you can do. As I've said, lateral breathing is the one that I'd advocate as being the most useful for you to do and the most healthy for the natural functional biophysiology of the body. But also as well, there are different exercises you can do for your pelvic floor. So I've created loads of these all laid out for you. That's in the program, but just enough for you to be able to do the ones that are really going to help you. And you've got some guidance on walking in there as well. So you want to be getting out and starting to do some exercise daily. Your medical practitioner and team will tell you when you can start getting up and out of the bed, literally if you're in the hospital stage, and when you can start doing gentle walking, and then you build up from there. So then following this rest and recovery phase, which I am going to suggest is always after you've had your postnatal, post C-section check by your medical practitioner, which is usually a GP or an MD, the medical care team is taking care of you. It's usually around 8 to 10 weeks, more likely 10. Once they've given you the clearance, I'm going to suggest you actually wait to 12 weeks. So you allow that first 3 months to fully be a rest and recovery period where you just focus on the walking, the lateral breathing, the core connections, and all of the other holistic strategies you can be putting into place, as well as getting used to having that lovely little baby. So at 12 weeks, you're then going to want to look for a gently progressive approach to your exercise. So I'm going to suggest the first thing you need to be doing is rehabilitating your body. You really need to get this first. So you don't just go straight into, oh, great, the GP has said that I can do some exercise, let me go and sign up for that circuit training or HIIT class where you are jumping up and down around a room or running up and down doing sort of like sprint circuits. So You really want to rehabilitate first, and the most important thing is to rehabilitate and integrate the core. The core with the breathing, so you see why you did breathing. The core with the pelvic floor, you see why I had you doing isolated Kegels at the beginning. And then you want to get that integrated now with a movement pattern. So this is all your general functional movement patterns, but also with a gently progressive work on the core first. Now there are lots of core exercises you can do that do not involve typical core exercises such as the crunch, because they actually fall into the exercises to avoid, and I'm going to go through those in just a moment for you. So the first thing you want to do is be doing something that rehabilitates your core, that is not too much high impact exercise, and that is going to allow you to start to rehabilitate and reconnect that core connection for you. So let's stop here, because right now I want to tell you exactly what exercises you should not be doing. Any exercise that puts undue strain or pressure onto your scar area is going to be a no-no. Now, if you hold this in the forefront of your mind as the overarching principle of all of this, it's going to guide you through the rest of the others and the rest of your recovery period. So when I say undue strain or pressure, that means overlifting, doing heavy lifting movements, or doing big crunch-like movements, or doing big twisting movements, or in fact doing something that's high impact, because it all puts pressure and sends it into the midline. One of the ways that you're going to know that there's undue pressure pushing out through the midline is basically having that sense of awareness and having that connection to your midline and being able to engage it, but it's also having eyes on the belly. So if you can look at your tummy and see that if any exercise you're doing causes like a bulging or a coning out, so where your belly starts to pop out through the front there, through that midline, it means that there is pressure pushing out, intra-abdominal pressure. That means pressure inside your abdominal cavity that is pushing out and it's blowing out through your belly. So when I say doming, it's going to be that when you're doing an exercise, you really get a bulging forward like this. Let me step back so you can really see. So where this would be your natural position is if you do an exercise and you start to feel this bulging position here, it means the pressure's coming outwards and your body is unable to withstand it and hold it in with an engaged core. That means you don't want to be doing it, okay? So keep an eye out for that bulge. Now, although you'll want to do myofascial release and you'll want to bring back mobility in the body by doing some stretch routines, what you don't want to do are stretches that put too much strain, too much stretch across your scar tissue, especially in those early stages. So if, for example, you're doing a yoga routine and before you could do something like a full back bend or you could do a cobra, then you're not particularly going to want to put that in as the first stretch that you do. You want to build up the ability for those tissues to have laxity, to strengthen, to lengthen only when they are ready. So it really needs this progressive and gentle approach. Likewise, this can be stretching in any direction because a twist can put stretch on something, you know, a lateral bend can put stretch across that abdominal region as well, simply when you're reaching for things at home. It doesn't always have to be in an exercise routine, but just be mindful that you're not overstretching before the tissue is ready to get to that position. Now, I mentioned not putting undue strain and pressure through your abdominal region. Well, one of the ways this can happen is by doing strength training. So external load, lifting weight, lifting heavy objects, in fact, lifting body weight before you are ready. So you want to build up slowly. If you are going to be doing exercise, then body weight exercise is what you start with, but you don't start with the most difficult version of an exercise. You start with the easiest version. You modify it so that you're having less strain, less pressure and less load on the body and gradually work your way up. And this is where the mindset of having patience is really going to help and put you in good stead. Because when you think slow and steady wins the race, that's really what's going to help best facilitate your recovery journey. Because if you're blowing out through that midline, all that strain and pressure, it means not only is it blowing out through the scar tissue and it's putting strain there where it shouldn't be, it's also going to be potentially blowing out through your pelvic floor and can cause you issues later on with pelvic floor issues such as urinary incontinence. So once you're ready to start adding in the weight, you want to, as I said, start with body weight, and then you're just going to add very, very light dumbbells or very, very light resistance bands onto that, trying that and seeing how that feels, checking in with how you feel the day after, the recovery day, and then doing that for at least a week to 2 weeks if you're exercising regularly, because you have to allow your body time to adapt to it and get used to it before you then start adding on a higher or more increased load or the harder version of an exercise. The next one to avoid are high impact exercises. So this is something where you're usually taking both feet up the floor. So where you're going to be doing jumps or leaps or even hops, where you're really putting a lot of pressure through that core as you lift and land. So just remove them from the beginning of your program and be patient and think that you can work your way up to those. So start with the lower impact version of an exercise, because there are plenty of other ways you can still add impact, that you can still get your heart rate up, that you can still get your sweat on without having to do high octane, plyometric, high impact exercises. So strip those right back and find other ways to get your sweat on, to get your heart rate up, so that you can feel like you're getting the intensity raised when you're ready to do it without having that undue pressure going through the core area of your body. So we talked about body weight exercise, we talked about doing core exercises. Well, when you combine these two together, another no-no is going to be doing prone push-ups. So prone means where you're literally face down on the floor doing that traditional push-up or press-up position, because this marries together the pressure that's coming from being in that position of doing a core related exercise, because it's essentially holding a plank, isn't it? And then you're increasing even more load and pressure because you're pushing yourself up and down with your body weight through that bend and extension of the arms to get the press up position. So just avoid doing press-ups on the floor. You can still do press-ups, you can do them against a wall, you can do them in a slightly, a position that's tilted slightly so that you are leaning against a surface like a solid countertop that's not going to shift away. But prone press-ups where you're laying down on the floor and then pushing up into the press-up position, which is a full plank, is going to be a no-no for the time being. And of course, with all of this, any movement that causes pain should be a huge indication that it's not the right exercise to do now. So stop the exercise immediately, be mindful of where it caused you pain, how that felt, cross it off your list for a while, leave it for a few weeks, and then come back and try it later. So if it's an exercise that's part of a progressive program, then yes, by all means think about phasing it back in at some point. If it's not, and it's just a random exercise you've plucked out of nowhere or you've seen in a video and it's not one you particularly need to be doing, then I would say leave it for a good few weeks, unless you have a particular goal to be able to do that exercise. For example, it's a pull-up and you're getting back into doing CrossFit or something like this. So you don't need to be doing a lot of these exercises. There's always an alternative that will train your body in a way that is just as effective and in fact sometimes a lot more safe, and especially safer for you when you're recovering from C-section and from when you are rehabilitating your body with that gently progressive approach. So I hope that's given you a good indication as to what exercises you should not be doing. So now I want to let you know what you should be doing. And this is going to be a much shorter list, and I'll tell you why, because you just need to focus on the following principles. You want to do functional movement patterns. That means movement patterns that mimic everyday life, because that's what you're going to need first and foremost. So you want to be getting into doing your lunges, your squats, your deadlifts, your push, your pulls, and later on your twist and rotations, as well as your bend and extension movements, because these are all movements you use in everyday life. They cannot be avoided. Maybe after the rest and recovery phase, you have already been doing them in natural living. So that needs to form a good part of your exercise program. Your exercise program also wants to include exercises that increase your mobility, your range of movement, and your reach. And that includes doing things like stretches, myofascial release. This is where stretch routines and yoga is great. Activities or exercises like Pilates, where you are increasing your mobility, you are getting some stretch through dynamic movement patterns as well. So that stretch can be static, which means you're still and holding the position as you traditionally think of a stretch, or dynamic, where you're moving through wider range of movements, which is usually the start of like a mobility or exercise routine, or it's doing things, for example, like a bar exercise routine. You also want to be doing exercise that is going to increase your endurance. This is endurance for your muscles as well as endurance for your cardiovascular health. So that means doing exercises where it's repetitive number of repetitions. If you are lifting body weight or light weight, then you want to be lifting, for example, 16 reps of something or 20 repetitions of something. And it also means you can be getting your cardiovascular endurance up by doing something that gets you slightly out of breath, but you want to build your way up to that so you're not putting too much undue stress and strain again on the body too soon. You want to focus on reconditioning your body and retraining it so that it can actually take on board more load than it's used to, because of course as a parent you will be lifting the baby. You've probably been doing it already. You'll be lifting a pram, you'll be moving cots, carry cots around the house, all sorts of things. You might have older kids that you're having to pick up. So you want to rebuild strength in the body. You need to do this through strength training. It's one of the most effective type of exercises you can do for not only reconditioning, but also for your metabolic health, to help you burn fat, to help you sculpt your body and improve the silhouette of your body, to correct your posture and to help you regain confidence in your ability and in your appearance. So really important, strength training, take that progressive approach as I've mentioned. So with all those being combined, you've got here things that are going to help you have your flexibility, that are going to help you have your mobility, your endurance, and also your strength back in the body. And if you're covering all of these, then you've got your bases covered. And then what I would add to that is also some mindful movement, because that's just the icing on the cake. So if you can find any of those modalities or types of exercise where you will mindfully be in the moment, where you can marry it together with all of your breath work, where you can get out and do the exercise in nature, perhaps do some forest bathing while you walk or while you go on a gentle jog when you're at the later stages, then that's going to be really good for you. Of course, yoga combines this beautifully. Things like Tai Chi, that really gets in there, the movement pattern with the mindfulness. And of course, you can get mindfulness from doing exercises like strength training routines or HIIT routines. Don't get me wrong, they can be included in that too. You just really need to be mindful in your body, in the moment, within your breath, and within the form and the focus of doing the exercise. So I hope that gives you a good overview of the type of exercises you can do to best facilitate your recovery, as well as the exercises that you should not do that could potentially cause more damage or set you back in your recovery journey. I hope you found this video helpful today. If you have, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments below, and go ahead and subscribe to this channel because I have a lot more videos that are going to be useful to you in the future. And if you think you know anybody else who might enjoy watching this video, then please go ahead and share the link. So thanks for watching, and until next time, I wish you well.